While minimal in its interacting systems compared to its influences like Thief the Dark Project or Thief 2, Neon Struct is a great little stealth game that pulls heavily from Thief. If that's your kind of jam like it is mine, it's definitely worth giving it a go. It's a great little game if you're looking to try something different to get that Thief fix that isn't just the Dark mod or fan missions. Neon Struct,
Die Augen der Welt
is billed as a political stealth thriller, comes from Minor Key Games, a studio consisting of two twin brothers, the Pittmans, with backgrounds of working on titles like BioShock 2, the best BioShock, which I did a video on fairly recently, and Borderlands. We play as Jillian Cleary, a spy sent in to do some stealth work to get to the bottom of things. We have a lot of twists and turns into the story. Bit of a spoiler, but happens very early in the game, but the group that we work for doesn't turn out to be all that great and mighty, and we spend a great deal of the game on the run from them in a way to clear our name. This is of course a common trope in the political thriller world, but the game gets it out of the way really early, and we get on with being on the run. For the gameplay, Thief fans will be right at home, from how we move, to the way the sound design is used in our stealth approach to how guards react. Of course, over the years, stealth games have gone the more visual approach of making use of mini-maps or seeing through walls, but it's so nice to see Neon Struct break that mold and go more back to the stealth of making use of audio along with visuals. While levels aren't the sprawling nature that the Thief levels are, there's still plenty of space and different routes that we could take to reach our objectives. This game makes use of a concrete and neon brutalist vision of the modern surveillance state and gives off a lot of also some 80s influences as well. Having a Thief-style game set in the modern world works really well for what's going for here, and this style complements the stealth elements that go along with it very well. The game is minimal in how we could deal with our enemies, choosing to go around them, or we could knock them out from behind. So if we do get caught, unless we escape or throw down a scrambler to temporarily blind them, we're kind of screwed. That said, we also have coins that we could collect to use as a classic distraction, as akin to the Hitman games. What's nice about the coins is how we have to go out of our way to find them in these geocaches placed throughout the levels. The game also has a grade system on how well you do, from no detection, to no knockouts, to no alerts, no alarms. Collecting these coins from these geocaches makes it a lot easier to achieve these, because you can use them to distract enemies to get by. It's a nice little incentive to have this scoring system on the replayability front, for these levels are quite replayable. We also have access to stims, where we can have the option to move in utter silence or being completely visible for a period of time, for example. When playing these kind of games where we have the option of hacking things, it's always interesting to see what the game does on that front. And here for hacking we have Brick Breaker.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
This game has an interesting ebb and flow in regards to its pacing. We'll be on a mission, sneaking our way through in utter silence unless we get spotted. And then usually afterwards we'll have a bit of breathing room to walk around the world with some soothing tunes from the band The Home Conversion, who wrote the soundtrack for this game, a combination of dreamy synth-pop and shoegazing guitars. The game does a great job of moving the story along without relying too much on text-heavy exposition dumps, but instead spreads them out. The different characters we interact with are quick and to the point with what they want, and as we approach the end of the game, we'll have some choices to make of how we want the ending to play out. Now this isn't as sophisticated as something like, say, New Vegas, but you also have to remember this is a team with less than a handful of people. All said, the game does a great job of laying out each group's goals and motivations and giving you the choice in how you want things to play out. It's easy in the world of political spy thrillers for things to become a jumbled messes of trying to understand the motivations of everyone, but here it's all crystal clear to follow. The game does a great job of laying out the pros and cons of each group for the decision you make. And for the end of the game, which sadly comes along a little too abruptly, we have breakdowns of what happens to some of the major characters and groups, again akin to something of a Fallout game ending depending on the choices we made. When it comes to the game's shortcomings, while the levels are quite large and plenty of ways to navigate through them, They could be a bit barren compared to the Thief games and their options of navigating. We don't have access to things like rope arrows, for example. That said, the game is very minimalist in its approach, and again, as I mentioned, it is a very small team of less than a handful of people. It strips it down to the very basics of stealth, and the game does a great job and feels polished on all of what it does. As I also mentioned, if we are spotted, we don't have a ton of options of what we could do. We could run away, we use scramblers, or knock them out. It would have been nice to have a couple more options on that front to deal with enemies, but say lo be. That said, the game is a great overall experience that's main focus is on stealth, taking heavy influence from the Thief games, which is always great to see, as so many modern stealth games take a more visual approach as opposed to making use of audio design into consideration. Although it's nice to see titles like Gloomwood, which I've done a couple of videos on here, will have taken that approach. So if you want a fix of stealth and made your way through the Thief games, the fan missions, the dark mod, Neon Struct is well worth your time, and one I'll definitely return to again. If you're looking for a dungeon crawler immersive sim to scratch out an itch like the titles of Ultima Underworld or Arx Fatalis, or the levels of the Lost City or Down in the Bone Horde in Thief 1, consider giving Eldritch a spin. Pulling in elements of dungeon crawlers, immersive sims, and roguelikes, it's a fun little romp that will help scratch that itch, while pulling heavy influences from the world of H.P. Lovecraft. Looking to make a mix of Dishonored, Splunky, and dolling it up with Lovecraftian fiction, Eldritch was made solely by David Pittman in a span of slightly less than 8 months. It's quite incredible how feature-rich this game is for something put out in that time frame by one person on a shoestring budget, especially when you compare it to those that have way too much time and way too much budget. Mr. Roberts. As Orson Welles said, the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. The levels are procedurally generated as opposed to handcrafted, and when I first played, I did actually think it was handcrafted at first. It's usually really easy to spot when levels are procedurally generated, and I'll always take something that's handcrafted over them when possible. But Eldritch is well designed and offers plenty of replayability as a result. This game's look is a bit ahead of its time, I think, when it comes to the indie front. While it does have that heavy influence of Minecraft, since this game did come out in 2013 with its blocks, it also has that low PS1 aesthetic look that's become more popular since. The music is haunting and droning, adding a great sense of dread to the environment, which of course fits in this Lovecraftian setting. There's a nice variety of enemies that are well distinct from their audio cues, and it's always great to hear their footsteps again. We could pick up some basic items like guns, knives, our fists to deal with these enemies. Oh, and we can also throw stuff like rocks or bottles at them. Another thing that we can make use of that'll be lying around is dynamite. And akin to the first Red Faction game, you can make use of this dynamite to blow up some of the environment. Don't have a key lying around to unlock a door? Well, if there's some dynamite nearby, you can make use of it. For the first 20 or 30 minutes, I was thinking this game was too easy, but as we make our way further in, it definitely ramps up the difficulty, and you're going to be out of your element and scrambling around before you know it. We could get powers from statues throughout these levels, and I wish that we knew beforehand if we could refuse the choice, for if you go up to one, you automatically get that ability and scrap the old one that you had. Granted, the names of the statues give more than enough indication of what to expect, but it would be nice to have that ability to refuse and stick with what we currently have. Plus, this game has the utterly terrifying enemies of these lizard statues that when you turn away, will come and mess you up really quickly. But it's nice to get our revenge with some dynamite on them.
Good. Revenge!
Eldritch is a great little game if you want to drop in and spend half an hour on or go for a long game session. It's a great little romp, and I highly recommend it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Keep an eye out for these games. They're really good and I'd highly recommend them. Like and subscribe, you know the whole shebang. Boulder Punch out.